In 1494, the Joseon dynasty is ruled by a bloodthirsty tyrant. A criminal named Ji Young is captured and brought before him. The king accuses her of making strange food that disturbed his mind. By all rights, she should be executed at once. But to everyone's surprise, the king gives her one last chance. He coldly orders, "Starting today, you must cook for me every single day. If you serve the same dish twice, or if I don't like it, you die." Ji Young is stunned. She only wanted to become a Michelin 3-star chef, yet overnight, she becomes the tyrant's royal cook. Even though the deal is unfair, she accepts it. Only by staying alive can she return to the year 2025. It turns out Ji Young is a famous modern-day chef. The story flashes back 1 month earlier, when she takes part in a top cooking competition in France. During the contest, the stove suddenly breaks down, forcing her to use a centuries-old straw fire grilling method to finish her dish. This ancient technique creates an unexpected flavor that deeply impresses the judges. Without any doubt, Ji Young wins the competition. She takes home $100,000 and earns a chance to work at a Michelin 3-star restaurant. Overjoyed, she packs her bags at once, ready to return to Korea to share the good news with her father in person. Before leaving, she picks up a Joseon history book her father needs and then rushes onto the plane. During the flight, a total solar eclipse appears in the sky, drawing many passengers to the windows. In the chaos, a man accidentally spills coffee on Ji Young. She rushes to the restroom to clean up, only to find the book soaked with coffee. As she wipes the pages, she realizes the book, titled Mangunrok, is actually a cookbook. One recipe, called hwanseban, has been deliberately torn out. She flips to the last page and sees a single sentence, "My dearly beloved, if you read this someday, will you come back to my side?" In the next second, the space around her begins to shake violently. The book suddenly glows, and shining words surround her. Ji Young is dragged into a time rift and crashes into a hunting net in the forest, losing consciousness. At the same time, the king is hunting in that very forest. He recalls how his mother was dethroned when he was young, and his heart is still filled with anger. Because the king is away from the palace, an important ritual ceremony is forced to stop. The Grand Queen is deeply worried. If the king hunts on the day of the ritual, he may anger the heavens, and a female ghost may appear. But the king scoffs at this. In his view, he lives in the age of Neo-Confucianism, and anything supernatural is nothing but nonsense. Just then, Ji Young wakes up in the forest and cries out for help. Worse still, her phone has no signal at all. She is completely confused. One moment, she is in an airplane restroom, and the next, she is in a strange forest. At that moment, the king spots a fox and rides after it. He fires 2 arrows in a row, accidentally cutting the ropes of the hunting net. Seeing the oddly dressed woman before him, the king becomes alert and assumes she might be an assassin. Arrows then flows past her. Terrified, Ji Young turns and runs, only to be driven to the edge of a cliff. She pulls out a stun gun to defend herself and demands to know if he is a cosplayer. However, the king sneers at her, calling her words frivolous and her clothes filthy, and decides she must be a beggar ghost. Ji Young feels insulted and keeps talking back. In the next second, the king fires an arrow and knocks her bag clean off. Only then does Ji Young truly sense the danger. This man is not an actor. He is completely insane. She claims she has a black belt in Taekwondo, trying to scare him off. The king has no patience left. He draws his sword, ready to end her life. Suddenly, an assassin shoots an arrow from the shadows, striking the king. He loses his balance at once and falls off the cliff together with Ji Young. Sometime later, Ji Young wakes up first. The king is still unconscious, badly wounded. In a panic, she pulls off her scarf and uses Vaseline to roughly treat his wounds. She reaches for her phone to call an ambulance, then suddenly remembers her phone is still in her bag. With no other choice, she turns to check his phone instead. At that moment, the king wakes up. He pulls out a dagger and demands to know if she is working with the assassin. Ji Young scoffs and asks if he has a persecution complex. She points out that if she were the attacker, she wouldn't have stopped his bleeding. But the king believes she kept him alive for a reason. Too tired to argue, Ji Young grabs the dagger from him. In the struggle, she accidentally knocks him out again. Exhausted, she ties him up. They walk from dawn until nightfall. The king is completely worn out and orders her to find him some water. Ji Young cannot help but laugh, mocking him for still acting like a high and mighty Joseon king. The king tells her to look closely at his clothes. Only a ruler can wear a dragon robe like this. Ji Young snorts and says you can rent the same outfit at a tourist spot for 10,000 won for 3 hours. The king is furious. He declares that once he returns to the palace, he will issue an order to bring her into his harem. Ji Young smacks him on the head and warns him not to joke like that again. They continue forward and soon spot a house nearby. The king explains that this area is his hunting ground, where common people are strictly forbidden to live. Hearing this, Ji Young recalls the tyrant Yeon Hui-gun from history books, who gathered women from everywhere and forced them to stay by his side. The king hurriedly explains that it was all to ensure an heir and preserve the royal bloodline and kingdom. Ji Young dismisses it as an excuse and insists the tyrant was simply crazy about women. She ties the king up in the yard and goes inside alone to change out of her soaked clothes. Suddenly, she hears a noise and rushes back, only to be startled by a woman who appears out of nowhere. Mistaking Ji Young for a thief, the woman raises a broom and chases her outside. Ji Young stops her and calmly explains she is not a robber, then asks where this place actually is. The woman nervously warns her not to yell. This is the king's hunting ground, and anyone caught here will be dragged away. Ji Young grows uneasy and asks what year it is now. The woman does a quick calculation and answers, "This year is the year of the blue monkey." Only then does Ji Young begin to believe she is truly in the Joseon era. She asks the woman to take her to the nearby cliff to look for her lost bag. In return, she offers to cook a meal. The woman agrees, introduces herself as Gil, and claims she has a sharp nose, good enough to spot fruits and medicinal herbs. Using what ingredients she has, Ji Young starts cooking. She spreads chopped vegetables over rice and squeezes on the chili paste she carries with her. Then, she browns butter in a pan and pours it over the bowl. A bowl of gochujang butter bibimbap is finally ready. She takes the first bite and is very satisfied with the taste. Then she lifts a spoonful to the king's mouth. Starving, the king swallows it without hesitation and instantly starts coughing from the heat. Gil tries a bite as well and chokes just as badly. It turns out this is the first time in their lives they have ever tasted spicy. But once the spiciness went away, they could enjoy the flavors, and it is rather addictive. Seeing that there is little rice left, Ji Young feeds the king one more bite. He swallows it without pause, and a look of pure satisfaction appears on his face. This unfamiliar yet warm taste reminds him of his mother, who died young. His eyes slowly fill with tears. After the meal, the two women prepare to look for the lost bag. Before leaving, Ji Young carefully tucks the king in with a blanket. Gil cannot help teasing her, "You take such good care of your husband." Ji Young quickly denies it, saying they are not a couple, then turns away in embarrassment. What they do not know is that the king is not asleep at all. He is only pretending. Not long after, soldiers arrive and change him into clean clothes. The king immediately gives an order, capture the traitor who humiliated him. Before leaving, he sets the house on fire. At the same time, Ji Young finishes washing her hair by the river and spots figures approaching from afar. She shouts for help, only to realize the men are the same thugs who kidnap young girls. In the end, Ji Young and Gil, along with other innocent girls, are dragged into a dark dungeon. Ji Young cannot accept what is happening and shouts that she is not from Joseon. To silence her, a guard stuffs something into her mouth. Once she calms down, she starts replaying the events of the day. If this truly is the Joseon era, then that rude and arrogant man is very likely Yeon Hui-gun himself. Remembering how she publicly humiliated him, she realizes one thing clearly: she is probably doomed. Soon, all the girls are brought into the courtyard. An official named Hong begins to select them. Only those who meet the criteria are allowed to become the king's women. When it is Ji Young's turn, she honestly says she is 27 years old. At once, Lord Hong tells her to stand in the left group. She's too old. Seeing this, Gil immediately lies and says she is 28, so she can join Ji Young in the same group. They barely escape danger, yet for some reason Ji Young feels slightly insulted. The younger girls are taken away to be dressed up, while the rest are sent to help in the kitchen. The head servant orders them to make delicious food at all costs, because important guests will arrive tonight. Ji Young asks about the guest's preferences, but the man refuses to tell her. Lord Hong assumes she is causing trouble and coldly demands to know who she really is. Ji Young explains that she is a chef and states plainly that she cannot cook a good meal without knowing anything about the guests. After a brief pause, Lord Hong agrees she has a point. He asks if she is confident she can make dishes that will satisfy the guests on time. Ji Young nods, but sets one condition. If she succeeds, everyone must be released tonight. Lord Hong accepts the deal and reveals that tonight's guests are a powerful father and son from the influential Im family. They have kidnapped countless innocent women and are extremely picky about food. Afterwards, Ji Young puts on an apron, ties up her hair, and gathers everyone to check the ingredients on hand. Fortunately, the kitchen has 2 large cuts of beef, perfect for making French-style steak. The problem is the meat is full of tough sinew and very hard to handle. Ji Young recalls a method mentioned in the cookbook. The sous vide technique can soften the meat. She asks Gil to bring some paper and brushes it thoroughly with oil. She cuts the beef into portions, wraps each piece in kelp, then seals it with the oiled paper. The next step is to soak the beef in warm water between 49 and 55 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the myosin in the meat reacts, making the texture extremely tender. After waiting for a while, Ji Young removes the kelp. Just as she hoped, the beef has reached the perfect state. Soon, servants carry Ji Young's steak to the table. Seeing only a few thin slices of meat on the plate, the Im father and son feel deeply insulted. They immediately order everyone from the kitchen to be dragged out and punished. Ji Young is completely confused. They haven't even tasted it. How can they judge the food already? She boldly declares, "The meal on those tables holds the essence of nature itself," and urges the guests to give it a try. Jay agrees, but warns that if the food displeases him, not only will Ji Young die, but Lord Hong's daughter will be taken into the palace as well. Yet the moment the father and son taste the beef, both of them freeze. The meat melts in their mouths, rich and deeply savory, completely winning them over. Seeing their reaction, Ji Young knows one thing: she has won. In truth, she made a dipping sauce by simmering shiitake mushrooms, small fish, and shrimp paste. It's basically natural MSG, boosting the beef's umami to the highest level. But suddenly, Jay sets down his chopsticks and coldly says, "I couldn't feel the nature you spoke of in this dish." Anyone can tell he is lying. Yet to protect his daughter, Lord Hong still orders Ji Young to be executed. At the critical moment, the king suddenly appears. With a playful smile, he says he wants to taste the dish himself. The instant Ji Young sees him, her eyes widen in shock. At that moment, she is finally certain he truly is the king. The dish is quickly brought before him. The king snorts and orders Ji Young to taste it first to prove it is not poisoned. This time, she doesn't fight back and quietly obeys. Then the king tastes the beef, and the flavor hits him at once. He even praises it, saying, "This dish is truly the greatest taste in the land." Ji Young finally lets out a quiet breath of relief, grateful that she is still alive. The king now fully believes she is a real chef and grows curious about her. Ji Young flatters him non-stop, then mysteriously claims she comes from 500 years in the future. Naturally, the king does not believe her and orders her to be locked up for the time being. Tomorrow, he plans to bring both Ji Young and Lord Hong's daughter into the palace. Governor Hong angrily scolds the king, accusing him of neglecting state affair while being wrapped up in a woman's embrace. The king explodes with rage and roars back, "When my mother was tortured back then, you stood by and did nothing." He then exiles the old minister for treason, forcing him to suffer the pain of being separated from his loved ones. That night, the king stands alone under the moon. Jay notices his sadness and tries to cheer him up the same way they did as children. They are not only closest friends, but also comrades who have fought side by side. Afterward, the king gives an order. All the girls are to be released, except Ji Young and Gil. He admits that everything he did was simply to avenge his mother. Now that the guilty officials have been punished, there is no need to cause further harm. Meanwhile, Ji Young falls into deep despair. She has no idea whether she can return to her world before being taken into the palace. She also confesses to Gil that she comes from a distant future. Unexpectedly, Gil actually believes her. She says that the first time she met Ji Young, she smelled something she had never smelled before. Ji Young then tells her the whole story of her time travel and becomes convinced that everything is connected to that book. Just then, Lord Hong appears and keeps his promise, ordering all the women to be released. Once they regain their freedom, Ji Young and Gil rush straight to the cliff to look for the bag. But while they are searching carefully, the king suddenly shows up with a large group of guards and surrounds them from all sides. Ji Young turns pale with fear and quickly explains that she only wants to retrieve her bag. The king looks around and soon spots it. He orders a guard to pick it up. Just as Ji Young is about to thank him, the king casually throws the bag away and says with a grin, "Now you have no reason to run away." With that, the women are captured once again and forced onto the road to the royal palace. Ji Young glares at the king and mutters under her breath, "If only I had a gun, I'd shoot him dead on the spot." Meanwhile, inside a private chamber of the palace, the royal consort Mokju is having an affair with a man. That man is none other than the king's uncle, Jason, his greatest political enemy. 7 years ago, Jason rescued Mokju from prison and arranged for her to get close to the king, eventually becoming his most favored consort. For years, Mokju has secretly waited for a chance to assassinate the king. Recently, however, their people acted on their own and attempted to kill the king without permission. Jason comes this time to warn her to lie low and avoid exposing her identity. Before leaving, he casually mentions that the king has recently brought back a young woman who seems quite beautiful. Hearing this, Mokju is filled with jealousy and secretly vows to torment that young thing. She immediately goes to welcome the king, pouring out her longing for him. The king brings her to Ji Young and proudly introduces her as the female ghost he captured. Ji Young knows Mokju is known in history as a cruel and wicked woman. Fear rises in her heart, and she lowers her head. Unexpectedly, the king steps forward, lifts her chin, and studies her face closely. Everything is strange and terrifying to Ji Young, and she only wants to know where she is being sent. The king deliberately puts a hood over her head to toy with her and orders the guards to send her to a special residence. She never expected it to be a good place, but she still does not imagine it will be a small, filthy prison cell. At last, she cannot hold it in anymore and curses the king as a heartless tyrant. At the same time, the royal physician is treating the king's arrow wound. Mokju quietly takes the arrow and hides it, a move that all but confirms her link to the assassin. But she pretends nothing happened and casually asks who helped stop the bleeding. The king recalls the frantic Ji Young from before and lets out a small laugh, casually mentioning the female ghost. Mokju's heart fills with jealousy. She is certain the king has taken an interest in that wench. Later, she meets Jae in secret and demands to know why Ji Young was brought into the palace. Jae explains that it was entirely the king's decision and that he knew nothing in advance. He then presents her with jewelry confiscated from the Hong family as a gift. Seeing his fake smile, Mokju realizes he must be involved somehow. She orders him to personally send the Lord Hong's household to a brothel to be trained. Jae says this is inappropriate and will surely provoke strong opposition from other officials. Mokju snaps back in fury. "How dare you question me after neglecting your duties?" Left with no choice, Jae can only accept the task. Afterward, he complains to his father, saying that Mokju has abused the king's favor for years, treating them like her personal servants. In his view, the best solution is to join forces with Ji Young and raise her up as a second Mokju. Later that day, a masked guy breaks into the prison and rescues Ji Young and Gil. They dodge guards one after another until they reach an open field. In an instant, fireworks burst into the sky. Performers appear from all directions, dancing in a circle around them. Just as the two women stand there in confusion, one performer removes his mask. It is the king himself. With a playful smile, he says, "I prepared this performance especially for you." The masked guy is named Gong, the king's jester with many secrets. After leaving, Gong opens a secret royal order from the king and is tasked with uncovering the mastermind behind the assassination. Elsewhere, Ji Young openly scolds the king, saying he has no right to toy with her like this. Enraged by her insolence, the king orders the guards to tie up Gil, even preparing to brand her with hot iron. Ji Young drops to her knees at once, begging for mercy. She promises she will never try to run again and pleads with him to spare Gil. Only then does the king nod in satisfaction and order her to prepare a meal for him. Left with no choice, Ji Young agrees, but makes one request. Gil must serve as her assistant cook. The king accepts, but sets a condition. She must cook something better than boiled beef, or he will kill them both. Ji Young and Gil are then taken to the royal kitchen. The royal cooks look at them with open disdain, unable to believe that women can cook anything worthy. Ji Young ignores them completely and focuses only on finding ingredients. In the end, she decides to use the venison the king hunted himself to create a French gourmet course meal. Before long, she presents the dishes to the king, trembling. The appetizer is beef tartare, served with thin slices of kelp. The king tastes it, and the aroma bursts instantly in his mouth. Rich, fresh, unforgettable. The second course is a rich French soup made from peas and milk. It tastes fresh and bright like standing in a sunny pea field. The final main dish is venison tongue, grilled on the spot. The unusual preparation stuns the king, who cannot help but remark that her skills are far beyond this era. Out of curiosity, he asks where she learned to make all of this. Ji Young answers honestly. She comes from a distant future. The king lets out a long sigh and says sadly, "It is truly a shame that you are still not in your right mind." At that moment, Mokju arrives but is stopped the palace doors. Through a narrow gap, she sees the king speaking closely with Ji Young and is consumed with jealousy. But the king has forbidden anyone from entering, so she can only leave in fury. Ji Young senses danger and tries to leave, but the king grabs her arm and whispers, "I have chosen you." On the way back, Ji Young keeps wondering what those words really mean. Suddenly, Jae appears behind her and proposes an alliance. If she tells him everything she hears from the king, he promises to ensure her safety. Ji Young knows she desperately needs allies now because Mokju will eventually try to kill her. So she agrees to work with Jae, but only if he helps her find her missing bag. Meanwhile, Mokju cannot accept the way the king is treating her and places all the blame on Ji Young. In secret, she orders the cook Maeng to constantly make things difficult for her. Before long, snakes are stuffed into the rice jars, and cockroaches crawl all over the stove area. By the end of the day, the two women are completely exhausted. They return to their cell and willingly put the shackles back on. Thinking of endless workplace bullying, Ji Young even feels that being here is somehow easier. But the trouble is far from over. Mokju secretly spreads rumors, claiming that Governor Hong was exiled because of the female ghost, Ji Young. Officials join together and submit petitions, demanding Ji Young be executed. Faced with their pressure, the king does the exact opposite. He appoints Ji Young to lead the entire royal kitchen and issues a harsh order. No dish may be repeated each day, or she will be killed on the spot. The officials are furious. In their eyes, the king is once again favoring a female ghost from goodness knows where. Unable to stop this, Mokju turns to the Grand Queen. She accuses Ji Young of being involved in the assassination attempt and seducing the king with food. Though enraged, the Grand Queen has no authority over the royal kitchen, so she decides to hold a cooking competition to test Ji Young's skills herself. Meanwhile, Ji Young and Gil are released from prison. They move into a room with heated floors and receive beautiful, ornate work uniforms, filled with excitement. But on Ji Young's first day at work, she faces hostility all over again. Head cook Bong mocks her openly, claiming she is unfit for the role and telling her to leave before she causes real trouble. Ji Young calmly replies that she already told the king that she won't be doing anything from the time being and will just observe. At that moment, the Grand Queen summons Ji Young and orders her to compete against the senior cooks. She coldly warns Ji Young that if she loses, she must lose an arm. The threat leaves Ji Young terrified. Seeing Mokju smiling nearby, she instantly understands this is a carefully laid trap. At the same time, Jae informs the king about the competition and deliberately mentions that Mokju was also present. Hearing this, the king rushes to the contest and points out that the rules are unfair. He then announces publicly, other than the one cook who wins today, the rest will give up an arm. With that, he orders his men to bring in the execution blade. At this life-or-death moment, Ji Young forces herself to stay calm. The king, meanwhile, silently cheers her on, praying she will not make a mistake. The Queen Dowager then announces the theme of the competition: filial piety. The ingredients must include tofu and soybean paste, and each cook will have 2 hours. Ji-young knows very well she stands no chance if she cooks a traditional palace dish. So she decides to take a risk and make the doenjang pasta created by her father. When she enters the kitchen, she finds that almost all the ingredients have already been taken by the others. Just as she feels at a loss, she notices some spinach in the corner, still fresh and green. She recalls how the Grand Queen almost slipped on the stairs earlier, and spinach happens to be good for both bones and anemia. At that moment, the old steward walks by and reminds her that there are still some leftover ingredients in the backyard. Ji-young gathers all the ingredients and rushes back at once. She takes a deep breath to calm herself down, then starts making the dough. Next, she blanches the spinach, chops it finely, and grinds it into a paste with soybeans. At that moment, she recalls what the old steward said: doenjang soup holds special meaning for the Grand Queen. It was the last meal her mother ever made for her, and it had a refreshing, savory flavor. For years, the cooks have tried to replicate it, but the taste was never quite right. Ji-young immediately changes her original plan and starts thinking about what truly makes that soup special. Just then, 2 cooks nearby argue over ingredients. Their footsteps scrape against the floor, creating a sound like waves crashing. In that instant, Ji-young suddenly understands, but the time to collect ingredients has already passed. She is not allowed to leave. The king steps in and makes an exception, allowing her to choose one more ingredient. But to keep things fair, if she still loses in the end, he will cut off both her arms. Hearing this, Ji-young curses him silently in her heart. With no time to spare, she sends Gil to find the ingredient she needs. Seeing this, Mokju quietly signals a maid to follow her. Outside, the maid deliberately pushes Gil to the ground and suddenly stabs toward her with a hairpin. Meanwhile, Ji-young stir-fries the doenjang to deepen its smoky flavor. She then begins making the soup and adds the spinach in. Minutes pass, and her anxiety grows stronger. Just in time, Gil rushes back, blood running down her forehead. But she forces herself to smile and urges Ji-young to keep going. Ji-young's confidence returns at once. Without hesitation, she adds the precious ingredient straight into the pot. Everyone is stunned, unable to tell what she is even making. Some even suspect she is preparing poison. The king immediately silences them. He knows all too well that this competition was designed for the sole purpose of getting rid of Ji-young. The only thing he can do now is silently pray that she finishes in time. Soon, time is up, and all 3 cooks finish plating their dishes. The first to be served are the dumplings made by Mayang. He uses fish meat as the wrapper, with a filling of beef, tofu, and mung bean sprouts. The dipping sauce is a mix of doenjang, vinegar, and honey. One bite fills the mouth with rich aroma. Next comes the tofu soup prepared by Bong. He wraps chicken inside tofu and pan-fries them, then simmers them in chicken broth mixed with doenjang. The fragrance of rare mushrooms adds great depth to the flavor. Finally, it is Ji-young's turn. What she presents is just a simple bowl of doenjang soup. After tasting it, the king smiles at once, while the Grand Queen frowns. In the next second, the Grand Queen suddenly begins eating in large bites, tears streaming down her face. The taste is exactly the same as the soup her mother once made. Curious, she asks what ingredient Ji-young added at the end. Ji-young answers, clams. Nothing beats clams when making a refreshing broth. She continues, spinach becomes sweeter and softer in soup, and it is also good for your Majesty's health. The Grand Queen is deeply moved and says she hopes Ji-young will continue making dishes like this for her. In the end, she announces that the winner of the competition is Ji-young. Just as everyone is about to leave, the king suddenly says that the time for punishment has come. Ji-young steps forward at once to stop him. She points out that the Grand Queen has maintained her health thanks to the food these 2 cooks have prepared all these years. If their arms are cut off today, it would go against the true purpose of the competition. The Grand Queen also speaks up, admitting that she should not have deliberately made things difficult for Ji-young. In the end, the king relents and spares their lives. As punishment, however, they must humbly follow Ji-young and learn from her for a period of time. Afterward, Yoon and Mayang drop their hostility and thank Ji-young for saving them. Ji-young chooses to let the past go and makes peace with them. Once everyone has left, she asks Gil how she got hurt. Gil explains that someone suddenly knocked her down. Luckily, Gong arrived in time to save her, but she never saw the attacker's face. At the same time, the king angrily confronts Mokju, demanding to know why she spread rumors to frame Ji-young. Mokju bursts into tears, claiming that everything she did was for him. She argues that she was only afraid he would become obsessed with a woman of unknown birth and forget about avenging his mother. The king slams the table in rage and orders her to shut up, but his fury triggers a violent headache. Mokju quickly takes out a powder, trying to help him relax, but he pushes her away and staggers out. Soon, news of the king's episode reaches the royal kitchen. The old steward warns everyone to be extremely careful when preparing dinner. Only then does Ji-young learn that the king constantly suspects someone is trying to kill him, and that only Mokju has been able to calm him. She realizes this is a severe trauma response and decides to make food that can soothe him. She uses buckwheat flour to make springy noodles, then creates a brand new sauce with clams and doenjang. Before long, she finishes a bowl of pasta that looks, smells, and tastes perfect. Seeing the dish, the king angrily accuses Ji-young of mocking him, saying he already had doenjang earlier in the day. Ji-young calmly explains that this is a completely different dish and personally feeds him a bite. The king is stunned by the flavor. He eats every last bit, and his mood visibly brightens. Ji-young explains that whenever she feels upset, her father always makes this dish for her. When the king asks about her mother, she says sadly that her mother passed away long ago. The king falls silent. A sense of shared pain washes over him. His own mother is gone as well. After a moment, he offers to bring her father into the palace so the two of them can be reunited. Ji-young once again insists that she comes from the future and firmly states that the book called Manganrock is proof of everything. Though the king does not fully believe her, he still promises to help her recover her lost bag. Late that night, the king carefully records every dish Ji-young has made into a book. Remembering that she once said the book was called Manganrock, he personally writes that name on the cover. Strangely, the book inside her bag begins to glow and disappears completely. Soon after, a guard reports that the person investigating the truth behind his mother's death has been assassinated. All that remains at the scene is a nameplate soaked in blood. The king is consumed with rage. He cannot understand what crime his mother could have committed to make someone go to such lengths to bury the truth. Overwhelmed by loneliness, he turns to alcohol to numb himself. Ji-young is ordered to prepare late-night snacks and bring them to him. Suddenly, the king pulls her into his arms and commands her to stay quietly by his side. Before Ji-young can even react, the king suddenly leans in and kisses her. After losing her first kiss, Ji-young stays up all night, furiously venting her anger on the food. To make things worse, the king remembers absolutely nothing about what happened. At breakfast, he notices Ji-young acting strangely and asks what is wrong. That question only ignites her anger. She sneers and says, "You're not my type at all." The king is completely confused and snaps back, "I've never thought of you as a woman either." Ji-young refuses to argue further and coldly warns, "Watch out when you drink at night." The king grows even more confused and calls for the chief steward. Blushing deeply, the steward whispers, "You laid your lips upon hers, your majesty." In that instant, memories come flooding back to the king. He panics, unsure whether to apologize to her or pretend that nothing ever happened. Meanwhile, Ji-young curses the king's shamelessness to herself and happens to run into Gong. She first thanks him for saving Gil that day, then asks if he saw the attacker clearly. Gong says he did not, but tells her to warn Gil to be extra careful these days. After that, he leaps onto the rooftop and quietly takes out the hairpin dropped by the attacker. The hairpin fits perfectly into a small casing. Years ago, his sister once served the king's mother, but died miserably, clutching that casing tightly in her hand. Gong silently vows to find that maid no matter what. At the same time, Jay reports to the king that ginseng smuggling has recently become rampant, and that the Ming envoy will soon arrive to discuss the issue. The king frowns deeply. He knows all too well that Ming's true goal is to take Joseon's ginseng for themselves. Just then, Jae changes the subject and asks whether the king really kissed Ji Young last night. The king immediately realizes that the steward must have leaked the secret. With arrogance, he admits that he bestowed that brazen woman with his favor, yet he cannot understand why she looks angry instead of grateful. Jae suggests that he should first learn what Ji Young likes and then give it to her. After all, women, by nature, are easily swayed by gifts. Seizing the chance to please the king, Jae presents Ji Young's lost bag, saying she will surely love this gift. It turns out Jae found the bag long ago. He originally thought it contained gold but found only a pile of strange items inside. As expected, the king is delighted. This finally solves a problem that has been troubling him. Jae then reports that the Ming envoy has brought 3 highly skilled cooks with him. He suspects they may be trying to win the king over through food, but the truth is quite the opposite. As soon as the envoy arrive, he scoffs at the local cuisine and orders his own chefs to cook instead. Soon, a stunning dish is served, tofu shaped like blooming flowers. The envoy says arrogantly, "Go and tell your king that I cannot eat Joseon food." Meanwhile, the steward leads Ji Young to the royal garden where fresh fruits and vegetables are growing. She is stunned to realize this is one of the earliest greenhouses in the world. Just then, the king appears and announces that she is now free to come and go as she pleases. However, he warns her not to cross the marked areas, as poisonous plants grow there. In truth, those so-called poisonous plants are simply chili peppers. Ji Young instantly lights up and explains that this is the perfect ingredient to elevate flavor. Taking the opportunity, the king returns her bag. Overjoyed, Ji Young throws herself into his arms, thanking him over and over again. After hesitating for a long moment, the king finally apologizes for the kiss that day. He intends to honestly express his feelings, but his foot slipped, and they both fell to the ground. Ji Young quickly stands up, only to find her palm scraped raw. Seeing this, the king panics. He gently blows on her wound and insists on calling the royal physician. Ji Young does not care at all. She explains that in the kitchen, getting hurt is nothing unusual. The king immediately orders all the knives in the kitchen to be dulled. Ji Young quickly refuses. She says that now her bag has been found, it is time for her to return to her own world. But when she checks the bag, both her phone and the book are gone. The two of them rush to confront Jae. He insists that when he retrieved the bag, there was no book inside at all. Ji Young panics. Without that book, she has no way to return to the future. The king tries to comfort her, saying he will continue searching the forest, and if that fails, he will search the entire Joseon kingdom. Feeling low, Ji Young returns to the kitchen, where she finds the other cooks tasting newly brewed wine. She downs a large bowl in one go and quickly gets completely drunk. To vent her frustration, she even makes up a song on the spot and drags others into dancing with her. Late at night, the heavily drunk Ji Young finally sobers up. Curious, Gil asks what could have happened to make her cry so hard. The moment Ji Young thinks about the missing book, her emotions spiral out of control again. At the same time, the king's mood is just as heavy. He truly wants to know where the future Ji Young keeps talking about actually is. The next day, ministers report to the king that the Ming envoy is extremely picky about Joseon food. He's even holding cooking contests everywhere, publicly humiliating Joseon cooks. The king refuses to bow to such arrogance and orders. If he doesn't like our food, then let him starve. Despite this, Jae still discreetly orders the palace kitchen to prepare some refreshments. After a moment of thought, Ji Young decides to make a dessert they have never seen before. Meanwhile, the king personally welcomes the Ming envoy and his entourage. The envoy instantly scoffs, "Your food is awful. Without my chef, I would have died of hunger." He then introduces his 3 cooks, one by one. Tang, the finest master cook from China; Fei, an expert in spicy cuisine; Li, whose knife skills are as impressive as his cooking. The king refuses to back down and declares that he also has an extraordinary cook and that the taste of true Joseon food will be available for them to enjoy. At the same time, Ji Young takes out her secret weapon for desserts, butter. She mixes black sesame and almonds, adds butter, egg whites, and sugar, and whips them into macaron shells. She then prepares fillings with black sesame, mugwort, jujube, gardenia, and rice, each with a different flavor. Before long, a set of macarons infused with Joseon flavors is complete. At first, the envoy looks down on the plain-looking sweets, but the moment he tastes one, he is completely conquered, as if transported to another world. The three Chinese cooks taste them as well, each showing clear amazement. Impressed, the envoy looks at Ji Young with new respect. He then proposes a cooking showdown between her and his three cooks to decide the terms of the tribute. Ji Young panics, fully aware she has no chance. Because Chinese cuisine is so diverse, she quickly signals the king to refuse the offer. But the king accepts the challenge on the spot, declaring that Joseon will also send out 3 cooks. Just like that, 3 rounds of competition are set. Afterward, Ji Young confronts the king, asking why he made such a decision without asking her. The king explains that he thought her holding up 3 fingers meant 3 cooks. At this point, Ji Young stops arguing with him. She asks what will happen if she loses or refuses to compete. The king replies that she will be treated as a traitor and punished, and he will no longer help her search for the book. In other words, she must win this competition no matter what. When the Grand Queen hears about this, unease fills her heart. In her view, no matter how skilled Ji Young may be, she stands little chance against the finest cooks of Ming. She decides to write directly to the Ming Emperor to put an end to this farce. At the same time, Jason meets Mokju in secret and brings her the macarons Ji Young made. Both of them are stunned by how good they taste, but Mokju refuses to admit it, saying the dessert is too sweet. Convinced that Ji Young will lose, they begin plotting to work with the envoy and use the opportunity to overthrow the king. That night, one of Jason's men secretly approaches the envoy, deliberately smearing the king as mentally unstable and unfit to rule. He then presents large amounts of precious gifts, hoping the envoy will pass these words unchanged to the Ming Emperor. The envoy realizes they are trying to remove their own king, but he refuses to join their scheme. Instead, he orders his cooks that they must win the competition at all costs. From a distance, Gong watches in secret and is shocked to discover that the Chinese cooks are also highly skilled in martial arts. He immediately reports this to the king, warning him to stay alert. Meanwhile, Mokju secretly summons the cook Maeng and threatens him, ordering him to lose the competition no matter what. The next day, Ji Young begins working on dried chili peppers, planning to crush them into powder and turn them into a paste. This will be her secret weapon for the contest. She then goes to see the king to request a pass to leave the palace, explaining that she needs to buy ingredients at the market. Worried she might run away, the king insists on going with her. He has her try on several casual outfits, and in the end, he's stunned by her beauty. At the market, Ji Young happens to spot a jade pendant that looks almost identical to the one hanging from the book. She doesn't think too much about it and turns away to look for spices and peppers. The king, however, quietly steps aside and buys the ornament for her. Just then, heavy rain suddenly pours from the sky. Gil rushes to bring in the chilies left out to dry, only to be interrupted by Fei, the Chinese cook. Fei barges into the royal kitchen, openly humiliates everyone, and demands a knife skills showdown. After the rain clears, Ji Young returns to the king holding a bouquet of irises. She explains that she picked them herself because these flowers can calm the mind. Deeply moved, the king presents her with his gift, including the jade pendant. Back in his chamber, he carefully arranges the irises in a vase, a smile hidden on his face. Ji Young, meanwhile, looks at the rewards filling her room and silently resolves that she must win this competition. But when she returns to the kitchen, she finds it in chaos. Everyone is sighing in despair. Gil tells her that Fei defeated everyone in the knife skills contest and destroyed all the kitchen tools. Ji Young knows this is a blatant provocation. She encourages everyone not to give up and vows that those arrogant cooks will pay for looking down on them. The next day, the two nations draw lots together to decide the themes for each round. In the first round, the cooks must create a meat dish never seen before. In the second round, they have to cook dishes from their opponent's country. In the third round, they must prepare a soup made with ginseng. This is the Chinese cook's strongest specialty, making it the most unfavorable round for Joseon. At that point, the envoy raises the stakes. If they win, they will take 200 tribute women and gain full rights to harvest Joseon's ginseng. The king fires back, stating that if Joseon wins, the tribute will be cut in half, and they will gain the right to freely purchase sugarcane. After the wager is sealed, the king announces that the competition will begin in 5 days. Ji-young deliberately provokes Faye, saying that the knife she left has been returned safe and sound. When Faye gets back, she discovers her knife has been deliberately damaged. Rage instantly consumes her. Over the next few days, cooks from both sides work at full speed, selecting dishes and preparing ingredients. From past experience, Ji-young knows very well that she has to be well prepared for the last round to win. Everyone does well in the first 2 rounds, but once they reach the 3rd round, both physical strength and creativity will be completely drained. After careful thought, she decides to cook a rich and nourishing ginseng chicken soup for the final battle. She plans to first cook black bone chicken in a pressure cooker, then rinse away the strong, gamey smell. After that, she will add red ginseng, jujubes, astragalus, and dozens of medicinal herbs to slowly simmer everything together. The idea is perfect, but there is one critical problem. Where can she find a pressure cooker? With the king's help, they visit a civilian inventor named Chun Sayeng. A sign reading "No visitors" is posted at his door, but the king pushes it open anyway, accidentally igniting the fuse of a cannon. The guard immediately shields the king, while the king instinctively pulls Ji-young into his arms. Luckily, the cannon is only a device for making popcorn, and no one is hurt. Just then, Chun-seng appears, muttering to himself, "Failed again." Ji-young introduces herself as the royal cook and explains that she has come to ask for help. Chun-seng ignores her completely, displaying his arrow device and driving them away. Before leaving, Ji-young deliberately calls out, saying she knows how to make popcorn taste even better. That single sentence catches Chun-seng's attention. She hands him a bag of white sugar and suggests adding it next time. Soon after, a loud pop echoes through the air. This time, the popcorn turns out fragrant, sweet, and crisp. Chun-seng explains that he made this machine to double the rice volume to feed the people, but sugar is far too expensive, and he simply cannot afford it. Ji-young hurriedly explains that if he helps her win the competition, Joseon will be able to import sugarcane at a lower price, and his dream can finally come true. At first, Chun-seng agrees to help her make a pressure cooker, but when he learns that the pot will be used to defeat Ming in the competition, he immediately backs out. He does not want to help those high-ups who discard people when they have done their use. After all, his uncle was once a famous inventor as well, only to be abandoned after being used. Ji-young does not give up. Instead, she decides to move him with a dish from his hometown. She prepares the batter, adds scallions to hot oil and fries them, then spreads the batter and eggs evenly on top. Gong and the guard fan the air beside her, letting the aroma fill the entire courtyard. As expected, Chun-seng is drawn in by the smell. Ji-young invites him to eat together, but he refuses, choosing only to stand there and watch. The king takes the first bite. The crisp texture lingers on the palate. Gong and the guard, tasting her food for the first time, are all left in awe. At last, Chun-seng cannot resist and takes a bite himself. He freezes, unable to speak. It is the taste of his hometown, a flavor he has not tasted in many years. Ji-young takes the opportunity to praise his uncle as a great man, saying the people have never forgotten what he contributed. Many of his inventions, even now, continue to benefit the world. Ji-young then admits that she truly loves cooking. Whenever she sees people smile with satisfaction while eating her food, she feels genuine happiness. Because of that, she hopes to use this competition to show the Ming cooks the true charm of Joseon cuisine. Once again, she earnestly begs Chun-seng to help her. Moved by her sincerity, Chun-seng finally agrees. Gong stays behind to help him finish the pressure cooker, while the other 3 head out to gather usable medicinal herbs. Meanwhile, Faye goes to see Jae-san and trades high-quality Sichuan peppercorns for some chili peppers. She grinds the chilies into powder and turns them into chili oil, which is her secret weapon for the first round. Elsewhere, the envoy learns from the trader that this competition may not go smoothly after all. They plan to create an accident so that Ji-young will never return to the palace. Tang overhears everything from outside the door. That night, fully armed, he asks 2 royal cooks to deliver a note to the king. The steward receives the note and immediately goes to Jay. At first glance, the paper appears blank, but when held up to the light, words slowly appear. Ji Young will be assassinated. Shocked, Jay gathers his men and heads straight for Chun Seng's place. The next day, the day of the competition, the pressure cooker is finally completed. Ji Young is overjoyed and thanks Chun Seng over and over. Just as they prepare to leave, assassins suddenly pour in from all directions. The defense system instantly sounds the alarm. Chun Seng quickly throws weapons for everyone to defend themselves, then ignites a powerful cannon, driving back part of the attackers. The remaining assassins rush into the courtyard, their target clearly Ji Young. In the chaos, she slips and falls, and the lid of the pressure cooker rolls away. Chun Seng urges them to retreat at once, promising he will deliver the lid on time. But the assassins quickly catch up. Trying to protect Ji Young, the king is injured. Fortunately, Jay arrives in time with reinforcements and rescues them. Ji Young, overwhelmed by shock, collapses on the spot. Afterward, the guard reports that these men clearly received military training. Jay concludes they must be troops sent by those with treacherous intentions. At that moment, Ji Young suddenly wakes up and immediately rides back to the palace. Meanwhile, everything at the competition grounds is ready, yet neither the king nor Ji Young has appeared. The envoy loses patience, accusing Joseon of disrespect and demanding the competition start at once. Tang steps forward and requests 2 more hours, claiming it would show how merciful their great nation is. The envoy reluctantly agrees, but time slips by once again. At the very last moment, Ji Young and the king finally return to the palace. Soon, the first round officially begins. Cooks from both sides must create a meat dish never seen before. As Ji Young focuses on preparing the beef, bad news arrives. Her chili powder is gone. This means she must abandon her original plan and change dishes on the spot. Forcing herself to stay calm, Ji Young thinks quickly and decides to make French-style beef braised in red wine. She first uses lard to replace the smoky aroma of bacon, searing the beef until both sides turn golden. Next, she stir-fries mushrooms, radish, and pumpkin. Finally, she adds everything into the pot, pours in red wine, and lets it slowly simmer over low heat. Meanwhile, Faye quietly takes out chili powder and adds it to her dish. The spicy aroma instantly fills the hall, making everyone cough. Ji Young immediately realizes who took her chili powder, but she has no time to deal with it now. Next, Lee brings out a bottle of liquor, said to be a one-of-a-kind wine served by Confucius's descendant. At that moment, Ji Young suddenly sets her dish on fire. It is a cooking technique no one here has ever seen before, and the crowd gasps in amazement. Faye also splashes hot oil around the pot, creating the same flame effect. After careful plating and final touches, both dishes are finally complete. The judges taste Ji Young's beef first. The outer layer of puffed rice is crisp, the meat inside is tender, and the gentle sweetness of red wine makes it feel like heaven. Even the envoy cannot help but praise her exceptional skill. Next comes Faye's dish, Kung Pao chicken. The moment it touches their tongues, the judges feel as if they are standing on a blazing volcano. It is spicy, yet slightly sweet, with a rich, nutty depth. The rare liquor perfectly balances the heat in their mouths. Faye solemnly explains that her homemade chili oil is the soul of this dish. Just as the judges are about to give their scores, Ji Young suddenly speaks up and asks to taste the Kung Pao chicken herself. After just one bite, she knows immediately this is her missing chili powder. Faye argues that she obtained it fairly, trading Sichuan peppercorns for it. Ji Young counters that this chili powder was a key ingredient she spent days preparing and had planned to use in the first round. Tang erupts in anger on the spot, harshly scolding Faye for using the opponent's ingredient without permission. He then publicly admits Ming's defeat in the first round, but to Ji Young, winning or losing no longer matters. What she truly wants to know is where the chili powder really came from. Under pressure, Faye finally confesses that it was Jason who gave it to her. Jason calmly explains that Ji Young's chili powder was never officially approved. For the king's safety, he ordered all of it to be discarded. With the situation at a standstill, Ji Young steps forward and takes responsibility, admitting she failed to protect her ingredient properly. In the end, the king declares the round invalid and rules it a draw. He adds that if all 3 rounds end in a tie, it will be considered the Ming's victory. After the round ends, a sense of unease settles over Ji Young. Without chili powder, she cannot make Chinese-style spicy stir-fried duck. Then she suddenly recalls a dish from the 1970s Sino-US summit, Peking duck. She feels this dish might just save her life. Late that night, Mokju secretly summons Maeng. She threatens him with his mother's life, forcing him to deliberately lose tomorrow's match. Left with no choice, Maeng has to agree. The second round begins. This time, both sides must cook dishes from the other country. Tang brings out a massive golden lotus. From it, he takes lotus root, and even puts the lotus leaves to smart use. Meanwhile, Ji Young places the prepared duck into the oven. Once all the fat renders out, the skin turns perfectly crisp while the meat stays tender. She then grinds peanuts, adds sesame seeds, and mixes them into a special sauce. When the duck comes out of the oven, she repeatedly pours hot oil over the skin to maximize its crispiness. Just then, a sharp pain shoots through her wrist. Left with no choice, she asks Maeng to slice the duck for her. But remembering Mokju's threat, Maeng deliberately cuts his own palm and withdraws from the competition. With time running out, Ji Young has to step in herself, yet she can barely hold the knife. At the critical moment, Gil steps forward. It turns out Maeng had long recognized her talent and secretly taught her how to use a knife properly. Sure enough, Gil steadily slices off the crispy duck skin. Ji Young then wraps it with sticky rice, cucumber, and shredded scallions, cuts it into small pieces, and serves it with her secret sauce. Meanwhile, Tang stuffs lotus root with vegetables, places multigrain rice inside a lotus leaf, and completes an elegant presentation. Both dishes are brought out at the same time. During tasting, the judges are completely captivated by the lotus leaf rice. The light lotus fragrance wraps around rich Joseon flavors. With just one bite, it feels like standing in a blooming lotus pond. Tang explains that this is a temple dish, and the 5 colors on the lotus root stand for 5 noble virtues. He shares that he was once saved by a Korean monk and lived in Joseon for 5 years, where he learned the local cuisine and language. Then it is Ji Young's turn. She explains that Peking duck is an ancient dish form the Central Plains, often enjoyed by the imperial court. The moment the judges take a bite, their eyes light up. The clean, sharp crunch feels like blades striking together. They exclaim, "It's the greatest taste on the land." After careful thought, the king gives Ming's dish 8 points, moved by Tang's respect for Joseon culture and his deep knowledge. However, the envoy deliberately gives Ji Young only 1 point, clearly trying to secure victory for his own side. The king explodes in anger and immediately declares the second round scores invalid, openly condemns the envoy's selfish conduct, and orders the cooks to taste the dishes themselves and score them. Unexpectedly, both Ji Young and Tang say they cannot objectively judge dishes they made with their own hands. In the end, the king announces that the 2 dishes are evenly matched. The second round is once again a draw. The envoy is quite pleased with this result. After all, if the third round also ends in a tie, victory will still belong to them. Later that day, the king invites Ji Young to drink tea with him. He praises her performance and tells her not to feel too much pressure. Yet Ji Young remains uneasy, worried that the crucial pressure cooker lid may not arrive in time. Suddenly, tea spills onto her hand. The king immediately summons the royal physician to treat her burn. The next day, the final round of the competition arrives. This time, the cooks must prepare a soup containing ginseng. Following her original plan, Ji Young begins preparing ingredients for ginseng chicken soup and starts simmering it slowly in a regular iron pot. Meanwhile, the Ming cooks choose a famous Chinese dish. Buddha jumps over the wall. They gather luxurious ingredients, including sea cucumber, abalone, deer tendon, and rare mushrooms. As Ji Young waits anxiously, Chunsang arrives flying a homemade glider and finally delivers the pressure cooker lid. Ji Young immediately pours the soup into the pressure cooker, making the chicken incredibly tender. By contrast, the Ming kitchen's progress is noticeably slow. Ji Young then wraps sticky rice in chicken skin and stuffs minced chicken into morel mushrooms. Finally, she pours the soup around them and tops the dish with crispy scorched rice. Meanwhile, the Ming cooks finish their final touches. The judges taste Josian's ginseng chicken soup first. In an instant, it feels as if a golden phoenix rises into the air. Everyone gasps. The chicken is unbelievably tender. Next, they taste Ming's Buddha jumps over the wall. The broth looks light and plain, but the moment it touches the tongue, layers of seafood and mountain delicacies explode with depth. Even the king can't hold back his tears. To ensure fairness, he proposes that the cooks taste each other's dishes and score them, up to 10 points each, for a total of 30. But Li cannot bring himself to take a single bite, as if suffering from severe anorexia. That means he cannot give a proper score. Ji Young recalls hearing that when some cooks reach a certain level, they can't eat any food. She rushes back to the kitchen and quickly prepares a special soup. Unexpectedly, it works. There is no fancy plating, but the taste is exactly the same as the stew Li's grandmother once made. He can't hold back his tears and starts eating ravenously. In the end, the Joseon team wins the final round by just 1 point. The envoy honors his promise and gives up Joseon's ginseng rights, but then makes an outrageous demand. He asks the king to give Ji Young to him as a gift. The king explodes in rage and slams his head straight into the envoy. Just as chaos breaks out, the Grand Queen arrives and reveals a personal letter from the Ming Emperor. The envoy drops to his knees in terror, begging for mercy, as all the harsh conditions were his own doing. In the end, he can only flee in disgrace. After the matter is settled, the Grand Queen scolds the king briefly, then mentions that Prince Jin Mayong is very curious about Ji Young's cooking and wishes to taste her food. The king agrees at once and invites the prince to lunch the next day. Upon hearing this, Jason and Mokju secretly plot together. They plan to poison the food the next day. If something happens to Prince Jin Myong, Ji Young will become the perfect scapegoat. Late that night, the king once again opens the book and carefully records every dish Ji Young made that day. The next morning, he gifts Ji Young a beautiful new outfit and invites her to meet him in the royal garden after lunch. Ji Young politely declines, explaining that she wants to see off the departing Chinese cooks. Soon after, Prince Jin Myong arrives at the palace. At first, he is visibly nervous. After all, the king is his half-brother. But after tasting the dishes Ji Young made during the competition, he completely relaxes and praises her skills without reserve. After lunch, Ji Young goes to bid farewell to the Chinese cooks. Tang asks her to pass a message to the king. The edges of things are always hard to see. When you sleep, make sure to lock the latch. As Ji Young ponders the meaning of these words, the Queen Dowager suddenly appears and slaps her hard, accusing her of poisoning her son. It turns out that after eating the chicken Ji Young prepared, Prince Jin Myong suddenly falls into a coma, his life hanging by a thread. Mokju secretly celebrates. Her plan has worked. Ji Young is imprisoned, and the guards brutally pressure her into confessing. Meanwhile, the king waits in the garden, full of anticipation, even practicing how to hug her properly. Suddenly, the steward rushes in, panicked, reporting that Ji Young is in grave danger. The king sprints to the prison and sees Ji Young covered in wounds. Blinded by rage, he draws his sword, ready to strike down the Queen Dowager. Ji Young desperately stops him, begging him to stay calm no matter what happens. Only he, she says, can prove her innocence. In the end, the king lowers his sword. He warns the Queen Dowager that until the truth is uncovered, she must not lay a finger on Ji Young again. He then promises Ji Young that he will protect her at all costs. At the same time, a minister secretly reports to the Grand Queen, claiming that the king intends to kill Prince Jin Myong to avenge his mother. The Grand Queen refuses to believe the accusation, certain the king would never harm a child in such a despicable way. Meanwhile, the king orders a full investigation into every dish Prince Jin ate. All the cooks testify that they ate the exact same dishes as the prince, and none of them suffered any adverse reaction. The royal physician then examines all the ingredients and finds nothing unusual. The king goes to Prince Jin's chamber and notices a pile of strange herbs on the table. The physician explains that Prince Jin hasn't been feeling well lately, so Jazan specially sent over some tonics. Suspicion immediately rises. The king believes the problem likely lies in these medicines and takes some away to examine them himself. At the same time, the Grand Queen visits the prison and demands to know whether Ji Young acted under the king's instructions. Ji Young denies it on the spot. The Grand Queen explains vicious rumors are spreading throughout the palace. If Ji Young cannot prove her innocence, the king himself will be placed in grave danger. The Grand Queen lays down an ultimatum. Ji Young has 3 days to uncover the truth. If she fails, she must put an end to it herself. Once freed, Ji Young immediately prepares lunch for the king. At that moment, the king is alone, carefully tasting each of the suspicious medicines. Hearing Ji Young's voice, he rushes to the door in excitement, pulls her inside, and kisses her deeply. After that brief moment of warmth, they decide to investigate the case together. Late that night, Ji Young brings the herbs back to her room to continue the investigation. With just a sniff, Gil instantly knows that Prince Jin's illness is not caused by food, but by medicine. Before long, the king begins showing the same symptoms as Prince Jin. Ji Young points out that one of the herbs smells strange, like rat droppings. The physician explains that the herb itself is not poisonous, but when taken together with ginseng, it becomes lethal. The king orders the physician to immediately prepare an antidote and commands Jay to find out who tampered with the medicine. The investigation quickly yields results. The true culprit is a female physician, but she has been missing for days. The king immediately assigns Gong to track down her whereabouts. The news soon reaches Mokju. Realizing the truth is about to be exposed, she orders her maid to kill the witness and silence her. Late at night, the maid takes the female physician to a remote area, ready to kill her. Just then, Gong suddenly appears and demands to know whether she used the same method years ago to kill his sister. The maid does not answer. Instead, she launches an attack, quickly overpowering him. She then arrogantly admits that his sister did indeed die at her hands, because his sister once coveted the king's favor and angered Mokju. Fueled by rage, Gong fights back, knocks her unconscious, and turns to question the female physician. She confesses that everything was done on Mokju's orders. Just as she is about to reveal that the true mastermind behind it all is Jason, an arrow suddenly flies in, killing her instantly. The assassin is none other than someone sent by Jason. Soon after, the king takes the antidote and his condition steadily improves. Prince Jin, however, vomits up the medicine and begins shaking violently. The physician explains that his body is too weak to withstand the drug's strength. Ji Young realizes this looks more like hypoglycemic shock, since Prince Jin has not eaten for a long time. She immediately rushes back to the kitchen and prepares a French-style creamy soup that is easy to absorb and rich in nutrients. However, the Queen Dowager still does not trust Ji Young and refuses to feed her son. With no time to spare, the king takes the first bite himself to ease her doubts. Only then does the Queen Dowager reluctantly feed the soup to her son. Before long, Prince Jin regains his strength and slowly opens his eyes. Later that day, Mokju goes to the prison to visit her maid. The maid swears on the spot that even at the cost of her life, she will never betray her. But to keep her secrets buried, Mokju kills her without hesitation. As the Grand Queen's 70th birthday approaches, the king carefully prepares a dance symbolizing longevity. Ji Young becomes the first person to see it. At the same time, Jason secretly visits a confused elderly woman. She is the king's grandmother, missing for many years. Later, the king asks Ji Young whether she still wants to find the book and return to the future. Ever since she cooked dishes far beyond this era, he had begun to believe her story, but he does not want to lose her. He slips a ring onto her finger and asks her to marry him. Ji Young takes a step back and refuses. She admits that she also has feelings for him, but she must return to her world, to her father, and to the career she loves. In the end, the king accepts her choice, asking only that she come back to him someday. Ji Young asks, "What if I want to come back, but I can't?" The king answers firmly, "I will find you by any means." Back in his chamber, the king records the first dish she ever made in the book, but cannot remember its name. The steward notices that Ji Young often longs for home and suggests naming the dish Hwanseban. That page happens to be the very recipe that once vanished from the book. The next day, the Grand Queen's birthday arrives, and a grand celebration is held in the palace. Because the Grand Queen has recently been unable to eat meat, Ji Young prepares an all-vegetarian feast that still tastes just like meat. Everyone is stunned after tasting it, except Mokju, who breaks into a cold smile. The king then takes the stage and presents the long-prepared dance to the Grand Queen. She is moved to tears, and the scene feels warm and peaceful. However, Jason has already set his plan in motion, ready to unleash even greater chaos. Earlier, he kidnapped one of the king's trusted men, Li, and used his wife's life to force him to betray the king. Following his instructions, Li steps onto the stage and publicly announces a horrifying truth. The king's mother died by poison. The king's grandmother is also brought in. She cries out that her daughter was innocent, then suddenly bursts into mad laughter. The Grand Queen suddenly feels unwell and tries to leave. The king sternly orders no one to move and demands that Jay read the letter aloud. The truth is finally revealed. Back then, the king's mother was accused of lacking refinement and virtue and being unfit for her position. Later, she accidentally scratched her husband's face. The officials seized the chance to demand her removal, and in the end, the Grand Queen ordered her to be poisoned. The king completely loses control, draws his sword, and prepares to avenge his mother. Ji Young rushes forward at once, urging him to stay calm. Just then, a minister suddenly steps forward and accuses Li of being a traitor. He declares that the late king had issued a royal command to keep this matter a secret forever, and Li disobeyed the late king's will. The words strike the king like a bolt of lightning. He realizes that even his own father was involved in the plot to kill his mother. Enraged, he orders all exits sealed, determined to personally kill those responsible for his mother's death. As the situation spirals completely out of control, Ji Young rushes to the grandmother's side. She hands her a piece of chocolate she made herself and begs her to tell the truth. The king raises his sword once more, ready to slit the Grand Queen's throat. But suddenly, the grandmother regains a brief moment of clarity and speaks her daughter's final words. "May my son right my injustice. May he become a sage king." Seizing the moment, Ji Young pleads with the king not to become a tyrant, because that is the one ending his mother would never have wanted. At last, the king lowers his sword and walks away in despair. Jason's plan fails, but he wastes no time plotting something even crueler. Assassins first kidnap Jay, then brutally murder his father. Next, they attempt to abduct Ji Young. Fortunately, Gong arrives just in time and rescues her. Before long, a minister brings urgent news. The rebels have kidnapped Ji Young, and only her hat remains at the scene. The king panics and immediately leads troops out of the palace to rescue her. However, shortly after he leaves, a masked man breaks into the Grand Queen's chamber. It is Jason. He coldly accuses her of putting the deposed queen's son on the throne, then mercilessly kills her on the spot. He then gathers his men and unleashes a bloody massacre throughout the palace. Meanwhile, the king finds Jay in the forest, but Jay urges him to flee at once. This is all a trap. Suddenly, arrows fly from the shadows. Jay shoves the king away with all his might and is killed instantly. Before the king can recover from shock and grief, waves of rebel soldiers surge in from every direction. A fierce battle erupts at once. Elsewhere, Ji Young is captured by the rebels while fleeing. Once again, Gong and his companions rescue her. Terrified and confused, she desperately asks what is happening. Gong tells her that Jason has launched a full rebellion, and anyone who stands in his way is being killed. Ji Young insists on going to find the king, but Gong stops her because the rebels' next target is her. He tells her that the best way she can help the king is to stay alive. At the same time, the ministers are urgently summoned by the Grand Queen and rush to see her. On the way, Jason intercepts them, and all are slaughtered. Jason then storms into the Queen Dowager's chamber, lying that the king lost his mind and murdered the Grand Queen, and indiscriminately slaughtered the court officials. He claims that to prevent further innocent deaths, Prince Jin must ascend the throne immediately. The Queen Dowager refuses on the spot, arguing that as long as the king lives, placing her son on the throne now would be open rebellion. Jason loses all patience. His face turns vicious as he threatens that they must attend the coronation the next day. Meanwhile, the forest is littered with bodies. Fortunately, one surviving guard discovers the king, barely breathing and unconscious. The next day, Jason's men begin spreading rumors everywhere, claiming that after slaughtering the royal family, The king died in an accident while hunting in the forest. Just like that, Prince Jin is pushed onto the throne. Still, some officials whisper in private that the real king should be Jason. He plans to win the people's support and favor first, then take absolute power for himself. That night, a guard comes to report. They have lost track of the king. Jason does not care at all. In his eyes, a deposed king who's on the run is no longer a threat. Before his words even fade, the wounded king suddenly returns to the palace. He looks at Mokju and gives a bitter smile. He once believed she hurt Prince Jin out of jealousy. Only now does he realize she was a spy planted by Jason all along. Mokju answers arrogantly, saying she has waited a long time for this day. The king and Jason then enter the hall for a private conversation. The king asks why he had to go this far. Jason explodes in rage, accusing him of killing countless loyal officials in the name of avenging his mother. He roars that the throne was meant to be his from the very beginning. Hearing this, the king is filled with guilt. He says he will accept any punishment, asking only that Jason faithfully uphold Prince Jin's reign. Jason gives no answer. He simply orders the king to be banished to the place where his mother is buried. Outside the hall, after confirming the king is alive for now, Gong quietly leaves. Soon after, the king is thrown into prison. He asks for his book back and writes a final message to Ji Young on the last page. "My dearly beloved, if you read this someday, will you come back to my side?" It turns out the mysterious book that sent Ji Young through time was written by the king himself. Just then, Gong secretly tosses a jade pendant into the cell. Seeing it, the king finally knows Ji Young is alive and lets out a breath of relief. Elsewhere, Ji Young also learns that the king survived. Still, her heart is uneasy. According to history, he will die shortly after being exiled. She begs Gong to save the king at all costs. The next day, guards escort the king on his journey. Ji Young secretly follows and tells him to hold on no matter what. The king panics, telling her not to take any chances. He's already planned everything. It turns out that he'd already predicted Jason would go for the kill, so he deliberately walked into the trap. At the critical moment, guards hidden nearby appear just in time to save him. Soon after, Jason arrives with a large force to confirm the king's death, only to be shocked to find him still alive. At that moment, Ji Young arrives with everyone from the royal kitchen. They know nothing about fighting, yet they stand firmly by the king's side. A fierce clash breaks out. Gradually, the king's side begins to lose ground. Suddenly, a grenade explodes, throwing the rebels into chaos. It is Chun Sayeng. He arrives with explosive weapons, instantly turning the tide of battle. In the chaos, Jason takes Ji Young hostage and threatens the king. "Come alone to the place where they once drank together, or Ji Young dies." The king immediately orders his men to retake the palace, then heads out alone to rescue her. Inside the palace, Gong and his loyal followers begin purging Jason's corrupt allies. One by one, those treacherous officials fall. Gong storms into Mokju's chamber and drives a dagger straight into her heart, finally avenging his sister. As night falls, the king finally finds Jason, and the two enter a fight to the death. In the struggle, the magic book slips from the king's robe, and a wine jar on the table shatters to the floor. Ji Young manages to grab a shard and cut through the rope. She rushes forward, wanting to help the king, but her eyes are suddenly drawn to the book on the ground. She opens it and freezes in shock. It is the very book she lost. By now, the king is badly wounded, barely able to defend himself. Ji Young immediately rushes forward and blocks the sword with her body. The king completely breaks down. All his rage erupts at once, and with his own hands, he kills Jason. He holds the dying Ji Young in his arms, crying and begging her not to leave him. Suddenly, the book begins to glow, and the moon turns blood red. Shining words once again surround Ji Young, layer by layer, and the page recording Hwanseban slowly floats out. The next second, Ji Young disappears together with the book. The king screams in despair, "Wherever you are, I will find you." The scene then cuts to a modern hospital. Ji Young jolts awake. The sharp pain in her shoulder tells her this is not a dream. Her first instinct is to look for the book, desperate to return to the king. Just then, her father walks in and pulls her into a tight embrace. With no choice, Ji-young returns home to recover. But every time she thinks of the king, tears stream down her face. While researching historical records, she's shocked to find out the king's body was never found and he went missing. Ji-young suddenly realizes that history has changed. Perhaps the king did not die after all. Yet what breaks her heart is that she has no idea how to return to his side. 1 month later, Ji-young starts working at a restaurant specializing in modern royal cuisine. To her surprise, the chefs here look exactly like her former colleagues. Though they do not recognize her, she feels a long-lost warmth. Just like that, she returns to the life she used to live. One day, a wealthy businessman named Steve comes to try her food. Strangely, he asks for the dish to be redone without even tasting it. Furious, Ji-young storms out to confront him and freezes on the spot. This man looks exactly like Jay. Just then, a familiar voice speaks from behind her. She slowly turns around, too stunned to speak. It's the king. He smiles and says he has come to fulfill his promise to find her. Tears in her eyes, Ji-young throws her arms around him and the king responds with a heated kiss. True love really does conquer all. In the end, they get their happy ending and never part again.